Hey, good evening. This is Tyger. Welcome to my stream. Good evening, AJ. Thank you for moderating my stream again. Happy to see you in my chat. Tonight I wanted to take us all back to a different time of railroading in the United Kingdom and have a look at Semaphore signals on the West Somerset Railway. So the DLC will be the West Somerset Railway, and we are going to play a service that runs from Minehead to Bishop's Lydeard, and I want to do this on the class 52 and at the same time take my Western Tyger livery for this locomotive on a ride. Wanted to do this maybe in the summer. Just let's go into the service. I think we have to restart it because I wanted to spend a bit more time in setting up the locomotive and then go back and set it up again. If I want to use my custom livery, then I cannot spawn on foot and walk to the locomotive, so I have to do it that way. West Somerset Railway, I think we all know that. No snow today. Or maybe if you want to have snow, we can go and see if we will get snow in the end. West Somerset Railway, as we all know, is a heritage railway, and it is modeled as a heritage railway in the game, and it has been a DLC that had been, or it is a DLC that had been overhauled by the preservation crew quite a lot, so it is really neat. It is a smallish one. Nevertheless, you spend a lot of time when you run from one end to the other because you are going so slow. And this is my custom livery, Tygerways livery for the British Railways class 52, and those locomotives are called the Western, and each and every one of them usually has a name that begins with Western and then second part of the name, and I just hijacked that and yeah, called it the Western Tyger. And today I will play with this little thingy. Regarding setup and safety systems, there is one feature in this locomotive that is easy to miss. It has a driver's safety device, a DSD device, that needs to be turned on from one of the two cabs that you have in the locomotive. When are we going to see Hank again? As soon as we do some shunting again, maybe when we're doing sampage grade. Today we are not doing any shunting, so Hank can just ride along or be the guard in this train. Then we are going to see Hank again. Here, this is what I wanted to point out. These three switches, they exist only on this end of the locomotive, not on the other cab there. So if you happen to spawn in the other cab, then you have to go all the way back and use those switches there. And you have a brake selection switch where you can select whether you are using vacuum brakes, passenger timed or goods timed, that is for freight trains with a different brake timing, or if you are using your air brakes, so the locomotive can work with both. And which one you would use depends on the cars that you are using. For example, those Mark 1 cars, you can see here, they tell you that they are vacuum braked. Steam heated and vacuum braked, so obviously you need to use your vacuum brakes with those cars, otherwise it won't work. So where did I end up? Through my door here. And though usually you don't have to set those switches because they are already set into the correct position. You have a battery isolation switch that you need to close when you cold start that locomotive. Our locomotive here is already running, and the DSD switch needs to be set to on so that it actually works. And then for the setup, as often in those old diesel locomotives, you have a master key, you have a reverser that at the same time can set your... You have to turn the master key on. It has an engine only position for cold starting the locomotive, a throttle for applying throttle obviously, a straight brake, and a brake lever for the train brakes. And the lights are down here, and this is the machine for the AWS. It's always important to switch on this first and then the cap change lever. Then it goes into self-test, as you can hear, and then you would be able to start. What does it mean to cold start the train, is asked on the chat. Well, at the moment you can see, and you can hear especially, that the motors, the prime movers, the diesel engines on the locomotive are already running. And this is what you usually have in timetable mode, but it is totally possible when you start the engine at the in the morning that you have to cold start it. You have to start the diesel engines. So I will probably just stop to show you how that works. We have two engines here, A and B, and now I just stopped it. Can you hear the difference? You can't not hear any engine noise anymore, and you have two indicators telling you that engine A stopped and engine B stopped. And for cold starting the train, you would probably even have to switch the battery isolation switch on. So if you go into your... Something is still running here. At least I can hear something run. There are two more. You can isolate the fuel transfer pump, and you can use the isolation switch for starting the engine. So if you wanted to cold start the engine, you would go into your locomotive, most probably, and you will close the battery isolation switch. Then you have at least electrical power, and then most probably you would have to turn on the fuel pump so that you're getting fuel to your engines, and turn on your master key, and then set the reverser into engine only. This is a special idle position for starting this thing. And you would turn on the throttle, just turn it on, not more. And then, let's see, here we have two rotations per minute meter. We can see when the engines are starting, like engine A. Let's try if it starts. Probably not. Maybe if we start, we set this lever to on. Yeah, you can see on this meter engine A started, and we can do the same with engine B on this. Oh, we have to hold it a bit and then let it go, and now we cold started the train. And then you can set your reverser, at least when you have enough room to move it, and then you can move the reverser. Not, you have to set the throttle to off first, and then you can set the reverser to forward, and then you can run the locomotive. Was that explanation enough, AJ? I would just restart the service, because you can see we are not starting with a boarding sequence, but we have to start rolling right away. And since we have to go through a bottleneck at the next station, we will have to start quite fast, and so I will use a startup sequence that is a bit... you wouldn't do that like this in real life, because I switch on the lights and turn on the DSD when we are already rolling. And obviously this is not the way you are supposed to do that, but I don't want to be so super late. The challenge on this really slow track with these old diesel locomotives that are built for much higher speeds is actually to control speed. And not overshoot, and this is not so super easy. We have a headlight, we have instrument lights. Brakes are set to running and the train started rolling. I just... what is it? Switch on this one. Set down. Okay. With the throttle you have a on position, what is a minimum throttle. You can already see the semaphore signals and the small shunting signals on the floors. We will talk about it as soon as we are stationary in the next station. But you can see we have AWS magnets here on that route that are actually working in their special fashion. This is the signaling box for the Minehead station. And the first thing that we do is to keep our speed below the 10 miles. We're approaching a level crossing. This flashing white lamp on level crossing, here's the sign for the 10 miles and the crossing warning. If you have a flashing white light, this tells us there's everything okay. We can pass the crossing, it is secured. If the light is red or a steady white light, then something is amiss. But with the flashing white light we can just pass the crossing. That sound that you just heard was the DSD device. You have a foot switch for it that needs to be pressed every 30 seconds or 60 seconds. It works a bit like the German SIFA. So it is a bit different than the DSD that you have on modern trains, where you just have to stand on your pedal and not release it unless you stand up and you have to depress it again. But it works more like, well, a mixture between the modern DSD and the modern vigilance device, or a bit like the German SIFA. So we are still keeping to 20 to 10 miles because we are not shot off the speed limit, but very soon we are, and we can accelerate. Accelerate to 25 miles. What is maximum speed on this line? You can see most of the time we are actually on a track that has only one single track and is shared for both lines, and trains need to arrange for passing each other, overtaking each other at stations where you have some sidings. Next stop will be in Dunster, and again the DSD. So did I say this here is the speed clock, miles per hour, and well, you have to divine a bit how fast exactly you are going, because you don't have a digital display. That signal is in a horizontal position. You can see we are looking at it from behind, so we can just ignore it. The other dials and gauges are for the brakes, the two different brake systems. The air brake system on the left, 2 gauges, the brake cylinders in the middle, and the vacuum brakes on this gauge here. We will look at them a bit closer later on, because I think it's quite interesting to at least it was interesting for me to get a better feeling for how vacuum brakes actually work and how they read. And those units that are shown here on this meter, I just found out that they are called inches of mercury, what is in my opinion an enchanting unit, a name for a unit that beats PSI or bar or whatever. by lengths. So the problem with the stop at Dunster is that we have to slow down to 5 miles before we are actually entering the station, and that is super slow, and then we have to get our whole train through this section of 5 miles. So I will start applying the brakes now. You can see the red hands here showing us that the brake cylinders are filling, or that would be the way on an air brake system, but since we are working with vacuum brakes, actually the brake cylinders are not filling, but they are applying pressure, and this is what indicated there. This is the sign that slows us down to 5. It is a combined speed and whistle board. Cannot really see it properly. There is a 5 on top of it, and the W for the whistling. So if you want to use this low horn or a low tone on the horn, you have to actually use the lever in the modeled cap, because if you just press your space bar, what you usually would do for the horn, you use the high tone horn, and that for this big and bulky locomotive is really a weird sound for that horn. Listen to that, AJ. So every time I remember, I will use the lever in the modeled cap. It even has a rearward facing horn, this locomotive, in case you are going backwards. But it has this high tone as well. And now you can see we have to divine where our 5 miles are on the speed clock and sneak into the station here, hoping not to be too fast, while at the end of the train we have to cross this level crossing here that is not gated. And the timetable does not really take into account that it takes us so long to get the train here at the platform with 5 miles per hour. So we will be running behind schedule after the first stop already. Well, funny enough, later on there will be more headway, and we will just catch up on the later stations. So 30 yards. Since we're crawling with those 5 miles, it will not be so difficult to get the train to a stop. Yeah, a bit short. When waiting at the station with this locomotive, oh, that got a Western Champion sign across my Western Tyger sign now. Unlucky. Well, we will have to live with that. You saw how it looks without that sign. What I wanted to say, the direct brake is not enough entirely to hold the train in place in this configuration, so you would have to apply at least some automatic brakes so that your train does not start rolling, otherwise the doors will close and you will have to open them again after securing the train. The door opening and closing system on these cars are actually slam door trains, so it would be up to the passengers to open and close them. But in the game this is automated, obviously, and you can do it because the passenger would never open or close the door. They would rather go through the closed door. Yeah, as I promised, stationary at the first station. I bring up the presentation for the semaphores, and this is not only heritage stuff, but you find those semaphore signaling rules in the current driver's handbook that is issued by the RSSB, the Rail Standards and Safety Board. And so they are still valid signals, even though they might have a bit of a different meaning. We will see that on the yellow signals. So let's just recapitulate a bit what we had on the British color light signals. Obviously we had the red, the danger signals, we had the clear, we had the yellow for a caution in between, so that the driver would know, okay, I am approaching a red signal. And in the 4 aspect territory, what we usually have on most of the DLCs that are here, someone is saying a black screen. Can you look into that, HA? Maybe it's the thing with the 4K streaming again on mobile devices. Yo, HA, are still awake? You can see everything normally. We had this in one stream before, that Twitch is not always sending out the necessary data for mobile devices to display 4K transmission, so I'm sorry. Okay, going back to my 4 aspect signaling system, the double yellow in front of the single yellow, all those signals are proceed aspects because the train can pass them. Only at the red he has to stop, and it is more or less funneled down by those signals so that the driver can adjust the speed of the train in time. We learned in the Brighton mainline stream also that there are banner repeaters that precede those signals if there are bends or other obstacles, so that you cannot see them from afar, and telling the driver what the status of the next signal will be. We learned that there are 3 aspect signals of that type and how to distinguish them, and I don't know if you remember, AJ had a look at those signals that are in the rules. I have not found them in the game yet. The banner repeaters with those fishtails, with those fins at the end, and they only worked for yellow signal. And I just direct your attention to this because we are coming back to the semaphore signals where you find this fishtail arrangement again. Same here. I would tell you there is a the next signal that can be only yellow, not red, is in a green status here. Again, this is only a recapitulation, that's why I'm going through it so fast. Okay. Well, tell me, AJ, if you are not getting it back into a mode that you can see it. But my presentation is on the stream, right? So when you're seeing the video, well, let's hope for that. Yeah, that is good. Then I can go on with the recapitulation before we get to the semaphore signals. We talked about the AWS magnets that are in front of every signal, and they go ding in the modern system when the signal is clear, and they go boop, and you have to acknowledge it, and then the sunflower lights up if the signal is yellow or red, so that the driver knows the train is approaching a signal that is at least in a caution aspect. Okay, that was the modern system with the color lights, and now I want to reverse engineer this system into the old semaphore signal system, and we can see how this connects. And for this, yeah, that was the last thing of the modern signal lighting. We could see that with this additional signals, the 2 diagonally arranged white lights you could allow a train to pass a red signal at danger for shunting purposes, so the train was able to go on but needed to be cautious because it was most probably calling on to another train or a locomotive being shunted so that it could connect to the train. Same thing again, now semaphore signals. I just moved it a bit to the bottom so that I have more room, and now I'm taking out the banner repeaters because they are not there in the old system. I'm taking out the fourth aspect, the double yellow, because it is more or less a 3-aspect system that we use with the semaphores. And here I put the sunflower on the magnets on top of them so that I have some room underneath, and then we can actually start replacing those signals. So yeah, but first, before we start replacing them, I put in the shunting signals that we did not have in the previous stream so far, only in this form here, as a signal shown in connection with a red light. But you know that from driving in and out of yards, if you see a red and a white light on one of those little signals underground, or 2 red lights, you know you cannot pass those signals. You have to wait until the signals turn to this aspect, 2 white lights, and then you can pass those shunting signals. And now we translate those signals into the old semaphore signals. Red light, signal at danger, looks like this. We have this red board, and it is shown in a horizontal fashion. This is the closed crossing gate, the closed bar that you cannot pass. It has at its end this white stripe so that you can recognize it, and it shows a red light. And then obviously you might wonder why all the bother with the blades if there is a light anyway that can be shown at night. Why not only show the red light dark like we are doing it now? The problem obviously was at the days there were no lights that were powerful enough that you could see them during day. They were not using electric lights or lamps, but oil lamps actually. So it was a quite weak lamp that could be seen in the night, but not necessarily during day. And the semaphore blade, obviously, much better visibility with that. So horizontally, we are at danger. On the other end of the spectrum, if you want to signal a clear aspect, you move this semaphore blade up or down. That is actually the same aspect. It is it just depends on the way those signals are built. There are lower quadrant and upper quadrant signals. They mean the same. Some of them go down, some of them go up. In the West Somerset Railway we have only lower quadrant signals that go down. We have already passed some of them. And then there is like 2 lenses on this blade, on the end of this blade, and then they put a green filter in front of the lamp, and then you will get a green light instead of a red light here. But what do we do with the yellow lamps? Obviously those blades here cannot display anything else apart from a red aspect or a green aspect, and sometimes we still need a distance signal. So those are stop signals, they are called in the rules. But we also have distance signals, and those are the yellow ones. And you can see here the fishtail form returning from the special banner repeaters, and this chevron is painted on the yellow blade in a black chevron again. And if this signal is put into a horizontal fashion, then it displays a yellow light, and this would indicate that the next stop signal is at danger. If it is off, then we will just see it over there, then it will indicate you that the next signal is not at danger. So obviously those 2 blades can be mounted to the same post. It's not necessarily so, but they can be mounted to the same post, and then one of them can actually be set to on. You'd call it is set to on if it is in the horizontal position, or it can be off in the non-horizontal position but in the 45 degrees. If you watched the stream about the Long Island Railroad yesterday, not yesterday, a couple of days ago, the last stream at any rate, this 45 degrees form and the horizontal form for the position light, all that is more or less returning there. So if put at if a signal with both blades is supposed to show a danger aspect here, then both of them would be on. Then you would get the red light and the yellow light on top of it, whereas for a clear aspect, those signals with both blades would show both blades in 45 degrees up or 45 degrees down. Again, they mean the same, and then you would not get a yellow light but a green light on some signals, maybe not no light at all or a white light, but at least at any rate not a yellow light. In the West Somerset Railway, those yellow signals that we will be passing have a bit of a different indication. They don't necessarily tell you what the next stop signal will be at, or what aspect it will be showing, but they give you information about a series of signals. Quite often the entry signal for a station and the exit signal, and if one of them is at danger, then it will give you a on position of the yellow signal. We will see that later. We will pass an on distance signal, and then we will pass a green stop signal, and then at the end of the platform we will approach the danger signal. And this the reason for this is that in former times on the West Somerset Railway, trains were able to go faster than the 25, but they could go with 45 miles or whatever, and then the indication of this distal signal being off would signal the driver that he can go through the station at speed at the 45 and not have to stop at the station, and everything is set and clear. If he encountered a distance signal that is on, that is showing a yellow aspect, then he would know, okay, I cannot run through the station with 45 miles, I have to slow down. This is that. The AWS with those signals works more or less the same. The only thing is you will not get a ding at the green signal, you will only get a boop at the yellow and the red signal. So the positive thing does not happen, but the negative thing totally happens. The next thing, how can I signal a driver that he can pass a signal at a danger with caution to call on a different train, just like those white lights that we would show on the modern system? There are several ways, and we will actually see them in the game. The first thing, there can be an additional little signal arm on the red signal that is white and has a red border on the top and the bottom, and it can show a red light or it can show a green or a white light. All that is possible. Can show no light at all that is possible too. If it is in the on position, in the horizontal position, it does not say more than obey the main signal, the signal on top of it. Typically if the signal is a danger, then both blades are in a horizontal fashion. If the signaler wants to allow the driver to pass that signal at danger, to couple to a train that is already in the track, to call on, to do some shunting and stuff, just like in modern times the signal would show the two white lamps to the red signal, then he can set this little arm to off, and then it shows a green light, and then you can pass this red signal. So at least when we're going into Bishop Lydeard at the end of our journey, we will see a signal of that kind. It will not be set to anything, we can just pass it, but you will see the signal arms at least there. And then at some signals it can have this C indicator, what means call on, more or less means the same than the lifted arm, or it can have an S indicator that allows shunting moves into that track. Or most important is you cannot just rely that the track is clear, but you have to drive carefully and be prepared to stop in front of any obstacle, especially a train. Okay, what did I want to add to this? On top of that, I wanted to replace those modern shunting signals on the bottom with the shunting signals that we encounter in our DLC here, the classic ones, and they can look like this. It is a white disc with a yellow bar across it, so more or less the same returns like here. The yellow bar, the red bar, the red horizontal bar returns here like this, and in this position the shunting signal tells you to stop, you may not pass, and it will have a red light here on the right side integrated into this red bar so that you can see it at night. To put those signals into a proceed so that you can pass it, you turn them by 45 degrees. Again, the same principle that you have here, and then another lens will get in front of the lamp, and then it will display a green light and you can pass it. And the same thing can happen on a signal at danger, like here. If you don't have this additional signal arm, you can encounter a signal of that kind. You have a large signal with a blade and a shunting signal underneath it, fixed to its bottom. And if that is set to proceed and the big signal is set to on, to danger, then you can pass the signal, but you cannot rely that the track is clear. You have to go carefully and be prepared to stop, just like with the two white dots. So a couple of possibilities to signal that you can pass the signal, but have to be careful and prepared to stop. So that is more or less how we translate the modern signals back into the old signals. Closed gate is on position, means stop if it is a red signal, means caution if it is a yellow signal. Lifted or tilted down 45 degrees is the clear on the stop, and no caution for the yellow arm. The next thing what I wanted to add to that, how to read those signals if there are more than one line. Like this is our line that we can run through, and there are some sidings. Let's say this is a station, and then you have 1, 2 or 3 possibilities how the train can be routed, and there is one signal that tells you which way you are supposed to go. In this situation, obviously all of them are at danger. You cannot go in any of those directions. The important thing is to know, when you encounter a situation like this where you have more than one signal blade at the same post, then you always read them from the left to the right, from top to the bottom. So the one on the leftmost is the one that you actually see in front of you when you look through your window on the left side. The one in the middle is the one in the middle, and the rightmost is the one that is rightmost. And typically when you have this stepped formation here, what is the typical formation that you should encounter, then the one for the main line is the highest, and the track that is farthest away from the main line is the lowest signal post. So if those lines would be on the other were on the other side, then those signals would be the other way around, and then this one would be the smallest, and so on. But it is always, you read them from top to bottom, left to right. If there is not enough room and you have to fix all the blades to the same post like here, then it is the same. You read them from the top to bottom is left to right, just like you are looking out of your window. So this is the stacked position, I think, not stepping but stacked. And then you read them from top to bottom, left to right. And shunting signals the same. And you encounter in the DLC here often shunting signals that are on top of each other, and the topmost is for the leftmost and the bottommost is for the rightmost. It is not that and this is important to know, this holds true even if the sidings are on the other side. So you don't count from the main line away, but you always count from the left to the right. So in this situation, when the sidings are on the other side, it is again the leftmost is the topmost and the bottommost is the rightmost. This is what I wanted to demonstrate here. There is a possibility that you can have direction indicators with the signal, but as long as you don't have them, then you have to stick to the rule topmost leftmost, bottommost, rightmost. And then it should not be a problem at all. And now we can go back to train driving. And I think we are already in a position where we can close the doors. No, we closed them a tiny bit too early. Are actually opening the windows too, for whatever reason. So, starting now, we are out of the 5 miles limit, but we are approaching a 10 miles limit, so there is no point in going really fast. What you can see here is an old whistle board, SW sound whistle. That is a newer whistle board that we know from other routes as well. We need to whistle in front of the level crossing. And stick to the 10 miles again. It's always good when running those lines to memorize some markers where you can accelerate when you know that you are actually out of the limit of this 10 miles limit. In this spot here I always count starting with this sign here that you can see from the back side, and then it is 6 telegraph masts or posts. So this was 1. And 2. And 3. And 4. And 5. How long and heavy are we today? I will answer that as we are 358.4 tons, so not that heavy. 175.4 yards, not that long either. If you compare that with the commuter trains on the Long Island Railroad or the Harlem line, this is a really short and light train. But still our locomotive actually has to work to get it going, especially in a gradient. But you could see I was counting and we are in the limit. They're closing into Blue Anchor. Blue Anchor has a speed limit of its own. I think it is a 15 limit. And for that also you have to memorize some spots in the landscape where you know now I have to start applying my brake. I think we will be getting a distance signal before we get to Blue Anchor. If you're going too fast and need to apply brakes, there is always the initial application, and then you would just look at this red hand here, and as soon as it starts moving you would release the brakes again. Like, look at the red handle now, the red hand now. As soon as it starts moving I release it again. This just slows the train down a tiny bit without slowing it down too much. Obviously when you're running downhill you need to apply more brake force, but usually you have to anticipate the release of your brakes, otherwise you will slow down your train much too hard in most situations. And to keep the train below the 25, I always try to not let the needle here on the speed clock disconnect from the 0 of the 20 number of the numeral. On the left you can see the sea side, the beach, and up ahead already the station of Blue Anchor. Those funny names of Blue Anchor up and down and loop or circle and stuff are the names for the tracks, if there are more. That was the AWS magnet giving us the sunflower. I had to acknowledge it, and you can see here that we are approaching one of those yellow distance signals, and here at least you can totally see why it makes sense to have this fishtail form, because when you have the sun on the opposite side of the signal you can't really see the color of the signal, but you can see the form. And now I think I have to slow down a bit before we get to that stop signal that is showing a green aspect. And this is what I was telling you in the presentation. Even though we got a yellow aspect on the distance signal, the stop signal is at green, showing a green aspect, because the signal at the end of the platform will be red. Here you can see the 15 indicator, the speed board in quotation marks because it's not actually a board. Here you can see one of those shunters in a proceed position. And we're going in the station. We're passing a really nice level crossing with gates that can either block the way for the train or block the way for the cars. At the moment they are blocking the way for the cars. But when they open for the cars, they are at the same time blocking the way for the train. This is really quite sweet. You don't see that on modern level crossings most of the time. And here you can see the exit signal is showing a danger aspect. Again, automatic brakes 30% so that the train does not start rolling around. This is Blue Anchor with the seaside behind us. And if we look at the signal more closely, you can see it is a lower quadrant signal. It is pointing downward. You can see the white stripe. You can see the rectangular form of the blade. You can see the oil lamp sitting here. So actually the signal guy could step up this ladder and refill the oil supply in the lamp so that it was able to shine a light at night. But it's quite obvious that this is not enough light to shine a light during day in a reliable fashion. So first we are still in the 15 miles limit, and as soon as we pass the last row of those beach huts to the left, then we can go back to line speed 25 miles. The signal that is coming up, you can see it, we can see it from behind. From behind it is just white, has the black stripe instead of the white stripe, and you can just ignore it because it is signaling for trains that are coming from the opposite direction, that are obviously not allowed to go into the station when we are sitting there or driving through the point out of the station. On the left, those beach huts, and as soon as we are at the last row of them, like looking into this lane, then we can accelerate. Let's just check if I remembered properly. Yeah. So we won't be speeding here. Yeah, totally. It is not a high-speed track. On the forums you can always see people posting results from speedruns on this DLC here. If you want to keep below the speed limits, then it is most challenging thing with those old locomotives to more or less keep them at a steady speed just below the speed limit and to memorize all the spots where you can accelerate and where you have to apply brakes. And I at least find that quite challenging. Now we're going to Washford. Washford is on the top of a little hill. That means we are going in an ascent now, going uphill. What we totally can feel, because we have to apply more throttle than before. Here a distance signal from the back side. You can see 50% throttle and we're still slowing down. So this is uphill, definitely. And this is quite nice, actually, playing around with the throttle and the brakes to find a way to manage the speed. So much harder than on a modern train with notches 1, 2, 3, 4. And yeah, it's just a beautiful landscape. Now you can see distances are not great. Already only 0.7 miles to the next stop. And still it takes quite a lot of time to navigate the route with this slow speed. This is one of the DLCs where I actually tried to find all the collectibles, and I found them all but one lamp. And I walked actually on foot the whole line from Minehead to the other end and back, and did not find this one missing lamp. So this is hidden really well. Maybe at some time I will just stumble over it. So closing in on Washford. We don't have a speed limit at Washford, if I remember correctly. But the summit of this little hill is actually in front of our stopping position, so we have to be prepared that slowing down the train takes a little bit more braking force than usually. On the left you can see a Gronk, I think, a 09 or an 08. No, it's a blue one, so it should be an 08. Yeah. And some sidings are here. You can totally see here the train is pushing on harder than it would usually do, and again I went a bit too far compared with the perfect stop position. Yeah, this is pretty Washford station. There's a railway museum, and here at the sidings some old freight cars. Again, the signals here, distance signal in the on position showing the yellow light, a stop signal in the on position showing a red light, signal a danger here from the rear. Shunters from close up, you can see the two lenses, the red lens for the stop position and the green one for the proceed position. Closing doors, releasing brakes, turning on throttle. And starting this engine, you can always feel how the engine moves every car after the other. You can always feel this little delay before the next car is set in motion. So we can speed up to 25 miles again, but have to prepare for a quite harsh limit of 10 miles after a level crossing that is up ahead, and we have to make sure that we don't go too fast because we are running downhill now, and this always is a spot where I tend to overshoot the limit because I'm accelerating from the stop position too fast. Now you can see I might have just made it here. And now going downhill for the first time we have to do sawtooth braking, meaning apply the brakes, take down the speed by a couple of clicks, release the brakes, let the gradient accelerate the train again, and then again slowing it down for a couple of clicks, because we do not have a dynamic brake on those old trains. You could do it with a direct brake, but this will, so you can use the direct brake to slow down the train a bit, but now this level crossing and the limit to 10 afterwards, let's see if we can actually make it. Here is the 10. I think they put some new paint on their old speed boards. They are better visible than they used to be, as far as I can remember. So let's see. Yeah, it does not look as if we made it, but I'm quite sure we made it. Let's wait for the next scoring and to see if we get our 30 points or only 15 or none at all. Yeah, I think we got new paint on those speed markers. Here, those 25, they are clearly visible, and they used to be not really visible before. So the train has to pass this 25 marker before we can speed up again. And if I remember correctly, then this is one of those spots where you don't really find a good marker for when you can accelerate again. I tried to do it with those bushes that cast some shadows on the track over there. So when you passed one or two of those shadows, it should be okay and safe to accelerate again. Like now, probably. Let's accelerate back to the 25 and check if we made it. Yeah, looks good. And now we're going to Watchet. There will be a limit to 20 before we get to Watchet, and then we are running into the station of Watchet on a downhill slope, so we need to be prepared for that. And halfway into Watchet there will be a limit to 10 miles. So we have to take care of that when we are slowing down for the stop anyway. At the moment we can just roll downhill. And can you see it? Yeah, here you can see it, the sawtooth braking. This is why it's called sawtooth braking, because it makes this sawtooth pattern on the speed diagram. Yeah, what I was trying to say, you can do that with the direct brake and apply some direct brake to slow down the train in a steady fashion, but this will obviously wear the brake pads and brake shoes probably, so that you will get in trouble with the maintenance guys, because they always have to change the brake pads. The next limit will be around the corner, I guess. We're turning to the left, and then at the end of the straight after the corner there should be the limit to 20. I think this is a spot of track where we are actually going in a little slope uphill again, until we hit the 20 limit that is upcoming here. Yeah, can't see that good, but it was visible. And now I think we are going on the more the steeper descent into Watchet. Across this nice bridge first. So I'm actually applying throttle at the moment, but now I have to be prepared for slowing down the train. into Watchet, because now we're going down hill and getting accelerated by the gradient. This locomotive is a nice locomotive because it allows this panorama view from the left to the right in the middle. AJ are still with me. So that's good to know. Running into Watchet, and now we have to make sure that we slow down for the reduction to 10 without overdoing it. I almost overdid it a bit. You can see it on the left side. Combined reduction to 10 and whistle board. I won't blow the whistle because I will have to stop first before we're actually going across the level crossing. Yep, that was nice. We have this nice little church here in Watchet, and another museum that is advertised here. Watchet Boat Museum. One of the collectibles being really hidden here, some around some corner. Here were all those. Here, this one I was looking for quite some time. This is where all the people spawn in this bush. We don't even have a signal here for this stop. When starting the train, you have to be careful not to apply too much throttle, because you can actually stall your engines when doing so. So first get the train rolling and then increase the throttle across a certain threshold. So still to the 10 miles limit. And Doniford Halt. That is always an annoying stop, I think, in my opinion. So my marker here was two telegraph masts being visible. The first one getting visible now, and the second one being visible now. So if I remember correctly, I can accelerate to the 25. But it will be only for a short while that we can enjoy the 25, because then we will have to slow down to Doniford Halt again. And I think it's a limit to 15 at Doniford. Yes, Halt. Doniford Halt is an interesting stop, because it has a sign, a quite rare sign, that we will have a look at. Looks a bit like the Scottish flag. So, closing in at the end of those beach huts again. We should slow down to the 15 limit. I think it's a 15 limit if I remember that correctly. Again, some beach, some seaside, and yeah, it is a 15. Yeah, it is a 15. Can use some throttle again to pull us into the station. With this constant acceleration, slowing down, this puts us behind the timetable quite heavily, because the AI trains, they can just run that in a totally different fashion. And at the same time, they don't pay attention to the 5 miles reduction in Dunster, I'm quite sure. So this is why we are behind schedule all the time anyway. But hey, it's a heritage railway, not an expressway. Yes, 1 yard. Doors are open, and now the sign that I promised. This one. What does this sign actually say? It is a sign that only appears on lines with only one track, and the AWS magnets, obviously they are always mounted in the middle of a track, and usually they are suppressed for trains coming from the wrong direction, where they are usually not supposed to come. But on some tracks, like on unidirectional tracks here, where trains are coming from both ends, they are not suppressed. And then this sign tells the driver that he can ignore the signal that he got from the AWS magnet that he just passed. So it is a cancellation sign for the AWS magnet that is not suppressed. Quite a rare sign, because usually you do not have unidirectional lines anyway. We're in a 15 limit. We got a yellow distant signal here with the arm on, telling us that we cannot go through Williton at speed. What we totally do not want to do. We just want to stop at Williton. So did I accelerate too early? No, almost too late. And here again, only a very, very short part of track where we can run with 25 miles. It's almost not worth it accelerating. But the AI trains, they do it, and when timetables are created with AI trains, then obviously you are behind the timetable if you don't accelerate. When passing the signal here that we can see from behind, we have to apply brakes to be able to slow down to the 10 at the end. or the entrance to Williton station. Well, maybe that was a bit early. Could have passed the signal and then started applying the brakes. The marker for the limit of 10 is at the green signal that you can see. And here, for example, you can see one of those stop signals that have this little shunting signal underneath. So this signal is actually able to not only display a green and a red aspect, but it can also display a red aspect, and the signaler can allow shunting moves into the station without signaling a full green aspect. And now you can see the timetable allows us to catch up, because we have almost 3 minutes until we have to arrive at Williton, and even with 10 miles limit we will be able to do that. On the right you can see a class 37. Stationed at the siding here. Then on the right you can see 2 stacked shunting signals for the line on the right, for the 2 paths that are possible at this track. There is a class 20 waiting on the other track. Chopper, I think, is the nickname. That's a beautiful one, but you cannot really see a lot if you drive it like this guy is driving her. So, signal at the end is red. This is where we got the yellow, even though the entry signal was not yellow. No, I thought I did not manage to stop, but the other train is actually starting. So, Williton, with the Williton signal box here. And what you can see here at this signal is a sighting board, I think is the name. On some situations, like here with the bridge behind the signal, you cannot read the signal properly because the signal is dark and the background is dark as well. And in situations like this, you can mount a white background to the signal so that you can see more easily the position that the semaphore blade is in. Those cars always remind me of the Hogwarts Express with the windows here, but they don't have compartments, they have the other layout. Here, by the way, it has the compartment for the guard. Can we go into the compartment for the guard? Not that way, at least. But here, at least you can look through the window. There is actually a brake valve for the guard, so the guard is able to stop the train if need be, even if the driver is incapacitated. Obviously not in the game. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm closing the doors again so that I do not fall back behind schedule. So Stogumber is the next stop. What is a stopping point on our way uphill? Because now there is the big ascent that we have in this route. Stogumber is about halfway up. Oh, and obviously now I started too fast. I was still in the 10 limit in Williton. Oh my god. I will get no points for this part of the track. You can see here. Whoop. And yeah, nice demonstration. That is what I find challenging here, that you always have to be so focused and on managing your speed and adhering to the speed limits even after stops, when you're not using the HUD, obviously. I think we can accelerate when we are at this part of the track where the bushes on the left side come closer. Yeah, like now. And now we can accelerate uphill. For a bit, 2.8 miles is quite a distance for this DLC. Maybe we can use this to get some nice externals. I especially like the sound, the rolling sound that those Mark I cars make. Running uphill, the same thing again. You always have to anticipate your changes in speed when increasing throttle or lowering throttle. It is so easy to overdo the one or the other. Always increase it a bit, lower it a bit. Look at the speed clock. Look in what direction the needle is leaning. And then increase it a bit more or lower it a bit more. And obviously knowing your gradient profile helps a lot. That was this little whistle board, SW, sound whistle. That one is from the other direction. I think I will open the window a bit so that I can talk about more noise or over more noise. So AJ, what do you think about the scenery of this DLC? Boring or cute? I think it is totally... It's relaxing. That's what I was about to say. It's totally relaxing. We're driving those old diesels here on this route. Always try and not to go beyond the speed limit on one hand and not being too slow on the other hand. It is challenging and requires a lot of focus. Yeah, maybe someday we should go there and have a look at all the train nerds that are running on this heritage line. Stogumber is an interesting name. So it always reminds me of cucumber. And every time I'm driving uphill here, I wonder what kind of vegetable a Stogumber might be. Yeah, but this is nice with the trees and the shadow of the trees and the locomotive. So, last 1,000 yards for Stogumber. We are still in the ascent. That means we have to prepare for our train to slowing down more than it usually would. Brake later. Apply less brake force. Yeah. The DSD jumped me when I was trying to clear my throat and had my hand on the microphone. No, Chili, you have to wait. We will be going out later. First we have to go to Stogumber and then there will be 2 more stations before we are done. Okay, start coasting here. Apply the brakes and see where we are going. Yeah, Stogumber. Again, one of those neat bridges. Obviously, you can have a drink or a coffee here, or raid the neighbor's vegetable garden. And this is done nicely here with the passengers walking up and down, but they are actually crowding this path here. You can see they have a hard time passing each other. So, accelerating uphill. Oh! I started early. You should not do that. I was so happy that the boarding procedure was done. Should have waited for the departure time that is set out in the timetable. But you can see, you don't get docked for that. But this is something that you actually should not do. It's stated in the operating rules at some point that you are not supposed to leave a station before the departure time that is set out in your timetable. Anyway, anyone who did not make it into the train in time, or on the train in time, should be blamed because they did not manage to pass each other on the way up to the station or the platform. Cows in the fields. Some sheep in the fields. Some people are always asking on the forums. This sign tells us that there is a crossing ahead. Are always asking that all the diggers and machinery that are sometimes found in the scenery should be animated. I would rather vote for the cows and sheep to be animated. Again, combined speed whistle board. DSD. Again, the white flashing light telling us that we can pass the level crossing, that everything is okay. The name for the next stop, Crowcombe Heathfield Loop. Again, this loop is not part of the name of the station, but it is the track that we are going on. There is the main and the loop. The loop is the second track where you can pass the train that is coming from the other direction. On some stations it is called up and down. And here it is called loop. Don't even know what the other track is called. Last mile to Crowcombe Heathfield. And Crowcombe Heathfield is the next summit. So the drive until then will be uphill. We have to slow down to 20 just before we enter the station. That sign for us? Yeah, it's another combined speed and whistle board. I think it is deliberately stated in the rules that you should use the low tone for honking in front of level crossings. Between 6 and 1 minute to midnight. That's what the rule book says. From midnight to 1 minute to 6, everything is quiet. Only in an emergency you are supposed to blow your horn at whistleboards. Again, whistleboard of that kind. And we're closing in into the station. Soon as there will be a little bridge or something of that kind visible, we should let the speed drop. There was the AWS for this distance signal, again telling us that we cannot rush through the station but have to stop there, because one of the signals will be a danger. That does not come surprisingly, because we wanted to stop there anyway. So I will just let the gradient do its work, and now we can see one of those stepped signals. The one to the left is green and the one to the right is red. What is good, because we are going into the loop, and that is the one on the left. Here is the marker for the reduction to 20 with an arrow pointing to the left. What is our track? And then we actually have quite a long wait here. And we can run some close-ups on the signals. And have a look at the vacuum brakes. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do with the brake gouges that were in action all the time. Overdid it with the braking a bit. So just pull the train to the end of the platform before it stalls. Alright, so now we have almost 7 minutes until we resume our voyage until the last stop. Signal is still at danger. We cannot go out into the open line again. We can see that the signal is green for a train coming from that direction. Again, a combination of stop signal and the little shunting signal. And there is actually the train already coming in. Again, a chopper, if I see that correctly, a class 20. See, there are two colors of those cars, some are brownish, some are red. They mixed one of the red ones in between here. Yeah, and the brown ones are the Harry Potter ones with the compartments. Don't know if you were able to see that. Here some people are actually... No, not correct. I missed that. Maybe I just imagined that there are cars with compartments. Yeah, quite a lot of people waiting here to board this train. You can see how those different filters can work on different signals, how they can be built. We can have a look at the stepped signals here again. Always remember well, here on the stepped ones, it is the left one for the left, and the right one for the right. If it was stacked on top of each other, it would be the topmost to the left and the bottommost to the right. The gouges for the brakes, that's what I wanted to talk about. Obviously this is the most important one for using the brakes, because as soon as we are applying brakes, those hands go from 0 to whatever 60, and this is, I think, pounds per square inch. That is the pressure that applies or is applied to our wheels. So the higher the reading, the more brake power is applied. And if we want to release the brakes, those hands need to go to 0. It should be actually two hands, the red one and a whitish one underneath for bogey A and bogey B, but they usually move as one, so you can only use the can only see the red one here. So this is the gauge that you need to look at when you're actually using the brakes here. The two gauges on the left here belong to the air brakes. We are not using the air brakes, nevertheless the locomotive is providing the air for the air brakes. And you can see here the brake pipe indicator, so the pressure that we have in the brake pipe, pounds per square inch, and providing 60 reading here. And here is the main reservoir reading for it. So divided into the main reservoir pipe and the main reservoir supply. Those are not really important for the operation. As soon as you are losing the reading here, then you can see that you have a problem, because then you won't be then it won't be possible to use the air brakes quite a lot. If you're using the air brakes, then the air pressure in the brake pipe, as you know that from a lot of other locomotives, determines how much brake power the train is going to apply. The parallel readings for the vacuum brakes are on this double gauge. On the right you have the VC, that is the vacuum cylinders, the power of the vacuum in the vacuum cylinders. On the left side the train pipe, and you can see it is more or less the equivalent to the main reservoir, the vacuum cylinders, and the train pipe is the brake pipe. It is not completely correct, but it works a bit like this. On the vacuum cylinders reading, the train is telling you what vacuum it is creating in its brake system, and on the left side you can see what vacuum there is in the train pipe. And the lower the reading in the train pipe, the higher the brake pressure will be that is going to be applied So the bigger the difference between those two readings, the more brake power will be applied, and this is given in inches of mercury. That is the same thing that works in a barometer. The higher the pressure of the atmosphere, the higher the mercury will climb in its little pipe and give you that reading. And a perfect vacuum will be close to 30 inches of mercury, and the vacuum that the train creates here on these vehicles is about 21 or 22. And if I apply brakes with my brake valve here, then I put air into the train pipe, and when I put air into the train pipe, then I am reducing the power of vacuum, because the more air, the less vacuum, if I may phrase it like this. And then I increase the difference between the pressure in the train pipe and the pressure or under pressure of vacuum in the vacuum cylinders. And the bigger the difference between the two, the more brake power will be applied, because then the brake cylinder piston will be sucked up by the vacuum in the vacuum cylinder and apply the pressure. Whereas when I'm creating an equally strong vacuum in the train pipe, then the piston in the vacuum cylinder will drop down because of gravity, and then it will release the brake power, just like we are doing this now. You can see that the reading in the train pipe climbs, and accordingly the pressure in the brake cylinders falls and the brakes are released. So for vacuum brakes, the relevant reading is at first here. You reduce the vacuum in the train pipe, that is equivalent to reducing the pressure in the brake pipe. Equivalent, but actually physically the different thing. Here I am putting air into the pipe, here I am letting air out of the pipe, but both leads to the pressure in the brake cylinders increasing. And inches of mercury, I'm really in love with this name. Now we're running downhill to Bishop's Lydeard, maybe that guy, Lydeard, and then we are done with this service. There is actually one more stop in the DLC, but there is only one or two services that actually take you there. This is a junction where you can leave the heritage track here and connect to the National Railway net. And I think it is nice that they recreated that part. But obviously you cannot run into the National Railway net in this DLC. But it is cool that it is there. It is a bit barren, scenery-wise, but at least the track is there. And now again what we will be doing, sawtooth braking to get our train home safely. And before we get into the station at Bishop's Lydeard, we can have a look at those little additional or supplementary signals that can allow shunting movement into the station. So if you look at the gouges that we have been talking just now, as soon as I apply some brake, put the lever into initial application, the pressure or the power of the vacuum in the drain pipe drops from about 21, 22 to about 15, and a little later, with a short delay, the red hand on the brake cylinder pressure meter climbs. Then I release, and then at first the power of the vacuum in the drain pipe goes back to 21, 22, and the red hand falls to 0 again. And we get this kind of a reading on our speed diagram. And again, we need to do this because we do not have a holding brake on this train, especially no dynamic brake. And if we were to use the direct brake, then we would wear off our brake pads and get in trouble with the maintenance guys. .7 more miles to Bishop's Lydeard. Enjoy the landscape while keeping up the focus, that we don't miss the point where we have to apply initial brakes and release them again, so that we keep up our sawtooth fashion. So how do you think the Western Tyger did perform, AJ? She would probably have preferred to go high speed. On a different line. Now the grade is lessening, as you can see. I sawtooth brake this below the 20. So finally AJ fell asleep. My explanations about the vacuum brake gouges was too much for her. This is the distance signal for Bishop's Lydeard. The yellow on the left. Asking us to sound the horn. Going into Bishop's Lydeard station, we have to slow down to 10 miles, even before we go through the little tunnel or underneath the bridge. Doing this downhill, so we will have to apply a decent amount of brake power to achieve that, more than our usual sawtooth braking. On the right you can see a field of solar panels. Giving proof that this is not a DLC set in the past, but a modern day's heritage railway that is represented in this DLC here. So this is the last signal before we get the reduction to 10. We will be running around this bend to the left, and then there will be the reduction to 10. And there also will be the signal with those little supplementary signals that can allow shunting into the station. We will be a little late, but that is okay. So if you look at those two stepped signals on the right, you will be able to see the supplementary signals fixed underneath them, showing a red light, those smaller white blades with red and with red on top and bottom, and they are set to on, meaning we just have to respect what the main signal is telling us, and the main signal is telling us green for the left, red for the right, and the point is set to the left. So all good, we can just drive into the station and do our stop there. We can rely on the track being clear. On the right you can see a second Class 52 Western locomotive with the original livery, the Marron livery. Exit signals are red. This is why we got the yellow on and the AWS alarm when approaching the station, so everything is consistent with what I told you before. DSD saying hello for the last time, and we are just pulling the train into the stopping position. And preparing for the final stop. Not to run the red signal. That would be sad. Well, we didn't. Now just loading, unloading the passengers. This is the way where you can connect to the National Railway network. You can see that going this direction, they work with modern days stopping boards and with more modern color light signals here on the exit, and well, probably I won't make it all the way to the connection to the National Railway network, so I will just stay at our station, have a look at the cows on the fields, and on our Western Tyger locomotive. Closing the doors, saying thank you for bearing with me. Yeah, closing the doors on the other side, probably. Saying thank you for bearing with me, and I hope it was not totally in vain to look at those semaphore signals here, and it is important for me to know that the signals that we talked about here, they are still in the current rulebook, so those signals are still valid on some tracks and lines. It is not just vintage and history, but they are still current signals in the United Kingdom. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take care, goodbye.